Good evening, class. My name is Sean Shetler, and tonight we'll be covering Chapter 8 of Richard Burridge's What Are the Gospels? This chapter is where Burridge applies his theory to the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, arguing that they fit squarely within the ancient genre of bios, or Greco-Roman biography. For much of the 20th century, Burridge argues that scholars claim the Gospels were sui generis, totally unique, unlike anything else in ancient literature. Informed critics focused on an oral tradition and theological shaping, often ignoring literary genre altogether. He challenges this, arguing that ancient readers would have recognized the Gospels as belonging to a known category, biawi. The confusion, he says, comes from inadequate understanding of genre theory and limited knowledge of Greco-Roman biography. His mission in Chapter 8 is to prove that the Synoptics fit in the biographical mold. Burridge begins by analyzing how the Gospels open. Ancient biographies typically started with information about origins, ancestry, or the subject's birth and early context. Matthew opens with a genealogy rooting Jesus in Israel's story. Luke provides historical markers linking Jesus to world events and introduces key figures surrounding his birth. Mark jumps straight into John the Baptist narrative and Jesus' ministry. These openings function just like ancient biawi in that they introduce the main subject and establish why his story matters. Burridge examines the central subject being Jesus himself. Ancient biographies were laser focused on the protagonist, and Burridge shows that the Gospels do exactly the same. His evidence is that roughly 1/4 of all verbs in the Synoptics have Jesus as their subject, and that's a massive concentration of narrative attention. For Burridge, this overwhelming focus on one person is a defining mark of biography, and the Synoptics pass the test with flying colors. Burridge then analyzes what he calls external and internal features. The Synoptics are medium-length works with clear narrative flow and not short pamphlets and not massive volumes. Internally, Burridge examines how stories function, characterization, pacing, scene types, and how virtue and identity are revealed. Ancient biographers use anecdotes, speeches, and key turning points to reveal character. One crucial point is that the passion narratives receive an enormous narrative weight, about 1/3 for each gospel. And Burridge notes that this isn't unusual. Ancient biographies often devoted significant space to the hero's final days and death. Burridge's conclusion is that Matthew, Mark, and Luke clearly fit the ancient biographical genre. They present Jesus as the historical figure whose life is the central focus, using literary patterns first-century audiences would have recognized. Importantly, the genre classification guards against treating the Gospels as myth, purely theology or fiction. Burridge's greatest achievement is situating the Gospels in their historical literary environment. He shows that they weren't weird or unprecedented and that they actually fit comfortably within the recognizable Greco-Roman patterns. His methodology is also strong. By using genre theory and comparing the Gospels to actual surviving biawi, he builds a persuasive case. For some scholars, however, Burridge makes bios a controlling framework that shapes interpretation too tightly. The Gospels aren't only biographies, they also contain prophecy, apocalyptic expectation, covenant narrative, and wisdom teaching and parables. Burridge's literary analysis doesn't fully capture the full theological intent of the Gospel writers. And some note that Burridge's conclusions rest on analogy and inference, not on direct ancient statements identifying the Gospels as biawi. While persuasive, it's still interpretive work. Chapter 8 offers a compelling case that the Synoptic Gospels fit the genre of ancient biography based on their openings, subject focus, structure, and narrative technique. And Burridge helps modern readers appreciate how first-century audiences may have understood these texts. However, we must remember while the Gospels share features with biography, they also transcend it. They present Jesus' life as divine revelation meant to transform the reader, not just inform them. Thanks for watching.